What do you imagine when you hear the Roman Empire? Probably famous emperors like Marcus Aurelius, Julius Caesar, and Augustus. Sometimes they're gods. And obviously a huge empire stretching from Scotland to Syria. But unfortunately, people often forget that the empire was built on the backs of its citizens. Hardly anyone knows what the average Roman citizen ate for breakfast, when they were expected at work, or how they chose to spend their leisure hours. In this video, we'll answer all of those questions and compare the life of ancient Roman citizens to ours. Let's begin. Rome, in its peak, had a population of over 1 million people. Obviously, they had to live somewhere. And it mostly depended on your social class and rank. The wealthiest Romans, such as emperors and noblemen, lived in a single-story house called a domus. These homes, at least in Rome, were usually located on Palatine Hill to be close to the imperial palace. They were very grand indeed, with marble pillars, statues, mosaics, and wall paintings. The majority of Roman citizens, not all of them poor, lived in multi-story apartment buildings or tenement blocks known as insulae. Sometimes the ground floor of apartment buildings was occupied by shops, and shop owners would live in the space above them. Housing areas were 7 stories or more high, and they were often dangerous and unsanitary. Fire, collapse, and flooding were common. The floor on which a person lived depended on one's income. Higher-paid tenants lived in the first 2 floors, which had larger rooms, windows, balconies, and running water. The upper floors were for the poor people in ancient Rome, and they offered substandard living conditions, sometimes with only one room where an entire family would live, with no natural light, water supply, or bathroom facilities. Beyond the city, wealthy citizens of ancient Rome lived in villas, which were larger than a domus because there was more land to occupy. The really rich had both a domus and a villa, and they could show both off to all their regular house guests. These homes were surrounded by vast areas of land for farming, entertaining, or private pools. Farmhands, animal workers, and other agricultural laborers lived in villages or farms in very small, cramped, primitive stone structures. Regardless whether rich or poor, tenement or villa, the fundamental social unit throughout the empire was the family, and from the early days of the Republic, the existence of the family centered entirely on the concept of pater familias. The male head of the household had the power of life and death over all members of the family. He could reject children if they were disfigured, if he questioned their paternity, if he had more than one daughter already, or merely if he felt so inclined. He could also sell any of his children into slavery. Gradually, over time, this extreme, almost all-powerful control over one's family would diminish. During the imperial age, things changed very rapidly. Although families still lived in one home, women could own land, run businesses, free slaves, make wills, be heirs themselves, and get a job in some professions. The ancient Romans tried to help their family grow through marriage, adoption, and remarriage. Adopted children had the same rights as any of the other children, rights based on their sex and age. In addition to wives and children, wealthy ancient Roman homes supported slaves. Let's talk about the most important, food. The diet of a Roman resident depended, as did housing, on the economic status, but there still were some similarities. To most Romans, the main meal of the day was in the late afternoon, from 4 to 6. The morning and noon meals were usually light snacks, sometimes only bread. Since there was no refrigeration, shopping was done daily at the many small shops and street carts, or in the city's forum. Many of the foods we consider Italian today did not exist in early Rome. There were no potatoes, tomatoes, corn, peppers, rice, or sugar. Neither were there any oranges, grapefruits, apricots, or peaches. While the wealthy enjoyed imported spices in their meals, reclined on pillows, and were served by slaves, many of the extremely poor or homeless ate rancid cereal or gruel. To others, the daily diet consisted of cereals, bread, vegetables, and olive oil. Meat was far too expensive for the average budget, although it sometimes became available after a sacrifice to the gods. Wine was the common drink, but for the poor, water was available at the public fountains. The citizens of ancient Rome started their day before sunrise. Some because they had to go to work, others because the noise of the streets prevented them from sleeping any longer. For most Romans, the workday began at dawn and ended around noon. The entire afternoon was reserved for recreation. Ancient Rome had a lively leisure industry, meaning citizens could entertain themselves in any number of ways. They might see a play at the theater or watch races at the Circus Maximus. Of course, there was also the Colosseum. The Colosseum had a diverse program. Aside from the famous gladiatorial matches, spectators could witness skilled hunters take down exotic animals imported from all four corners of the empire. On rare occasions, the Colosseum floor was flooded and filled with mock shipwrecks, so fighters could restage historic naval battles. Hungry onlookers could purchase various snacks from concession stands, ranging from almonds and quinces to plums and pomegranates. After a busy day conducting business and attending the games, a Roman citizen needed to relax, and this relaxation time was spent at the baths. Bathing was important to all Romans. That's why they deserve a separate chapter. The baths were a place to socialize and sometimes conduct business. In 33 BCE, there were 170 in Rome, and by 400 CE, there were over 800, including the largest and most sumptuous, the baths of Trajan, Caracalla, and Diocletian. An emperor could always ensure his popularity by building baths. A typical bath included a gym, health center, swimming pool, and food stands. Most were very cheap to use and even free on public holidays. A typical bath would have 3 rooms: a tepidarium or relaxation room, a caldarium or hotter room, and a frigidarium or cooling room. Slaves were used to maintain the heat in the various hot rooms as well as attend to the needs of the wealthy. It covered 32 acres with a lavish garden, fountains, sculptures, and even a running track. It could seat 3,000 guests. After a relaxing afternoon at the baths, a Roman citizen, wealthy or poor, would return home for their evening meal. Daily life in a Roman city was completely dependent on one's economic status. The city, however, remained a mixture of wealth and poverty, often existing side by side. The wealthy had the benefit of slave labor, whether it was heating the water at the baths, serving them their evening meal, or educating their children. The poor, on the other hand, had no access to education, lived in run-down tenements, and sometimes lived off the charity of the city. Historians still argue about the fall of the empire. Was it religion or the influx of barbarians? However, there are those who point to the poor of the city, the squalor, the rise of the unemployed, and the increase in disease and crime as a contributing factor to the Western Empire's eventual demise. Share your thoughts in the comments. What was the most surprising thing to learn about the life of Roman citizens? It will be interesting to read what you have learned. And also, thank you for watching up to this moment. Please don't forget to like and share the video to your friends. Goodbye.